Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Connection Week 21. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I have such an important topic that I want to discuss. And I want to discuss it because it's a question I get so often. I received it in the questions that you all sent in for Coffee and Connection. I hear it from my clients all the time. It's something that I myself struggle with, right? It's one of those big topics, which is what do we do when our husbands say something that just pushes our buttons, it triggers something within us, they're critical, they say something negative. How do we not get pulled into that? How do we not make it become a whole fight, a whole discussion, right? And let's first just talk about why this is important. Like, why not just say that's not true and, share our side of what is true? So, why not just do that, right? Well, think about the last few times you tried to do that and ask yourself if it actually worked, right? Did your husband say, "Oh, you're right. I messed up. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm so sorry." And everything was great. Like, did he listen? Did it make a difference? Getting defensive doesn't help for two reasons. Number one, they don't listen. It doesn't help anything because in that moment, what they're hearing is, you're not listening to me. You're not respecting what I have to say. And number two, it even gives permission to the conversation. Like, oh, let's have a discussion about whether or not I'm a mess. Let's have a discussion about whether or not I don't care about you. Let's have a discussion about whether or not I'm lazy. No, let's not have a discussion about that, right? Because that's not up for discussion, right? So that doesn't work. Getting defensive doesn't work. Fighting back, well, that's obviously is not going to work, right? That's going to cause even more of a fight. That's going to, put the two of you at odds with each other. And in all of that, you're losing the question of like you're losing the ability to really hear and understand what's going on. So and for him to hear to feel heard and understood. So let's talk about there's so many different tools that I could give you. There's so many different things that you can use in that moment. I want to discuss three, okay? And as much time as we can, I want to discuss three different things that can help you in that moment. And basically, we're going to divide that into three different options what as to what is three different possibilities as to whether what he's saying, as to how you can understand what he's saying or how you can view what he's saying. Okay? The three are A, he's right? Number one, he's right. Number two, he's wrong. Number three, did he really say that? Okay. And this is what we're going to go over those three. Okay. So let's just understand. And this is, we'll start talking about this in the first, the first thing was, is he right? Let's understand that it is when our husbands say something or anyone says anything that upsets us, it's very important to understand that what's upsetting us most of the time, if not always, is not necessarily what he's saying, it's how we are interpreting it. It's what we are taking from what he is saying. Okay. And I'm going to give a shout out to my coach here who would always tell me, when I'd say, I can't believe my husband said that. I can't. She'd say, Chana, what if your husband told you you have green hair? You have green hair. Would you feel the need to fight back about that? Would you feel the need to defend yourself? Would you feel the need to show him why he's wrong? Right? You just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Like, what do you mean? You wouldn't get into anything. The only reason that anything our husband says bothers us is if we are choosing, and I'm using that word consciously, we are choosing to let it bother us. Now, often that choice is not a conscious choice. I don't think it's ever conscious, right? But unconsciously, we are making a choice to be bothered by that. We are choosing to believe something about what he's saying. And that's why it's so important to break it down into these three categories. So, number one, let's say what he said is true. Let's say he comes home at the end of the day and the house is a mess, and he says, the house is a mess. Now, is it true? Yes. Now, what happens is that we can get defensive, right? Like, I can't believe you said that. And that goes already into number three, which is what am I making it mean? But even if what he's saying is true, you didn't clean up, let's say it's true that I didn't clean that day. And I know I didn't clean because I was busy with other things, or I cleaned and then, the kids spilled a box of cornflakes on the floor. So it's a mess again. Or I cleaned other rooms and that's what he's choosing to see. Either way, whichever way, what he's saying is correct. And what you can do in that moment is actually bring acceptance, bring that truth to the situation. You can say, yeah, it is a mess, right? Yeah, it's a mess. Or if it's really not, you're looking around, you're like, so there's also that gray line of like, well, it's half true, but it's not. Like it has a little bit of truth. You could say, what specifically are you looking at? Right? What specifically do you see is messy? But if it's true. And then we can ask ourselves, what scares us about it being true? Right? What scares us in that moment? What if it's true? Right? It doesn't have to mean anything more than that. Yes, it's a mess. Yes, you're right. It's a mess. I don't, it's so crazy, so annoying. It's frustrating me. Or, oh yeah, it's a mess. Want to help me clean up? Right? It's true. And so notice there that feeling of defensiveness that comes up when we hear something true, and we can ask ourselves, what scares me about it being true? Because there's something that's coming up for us in that moment that would cause us to fight it. So it may be a fear that if the house is a mess, it means I'm not good enough. Or if you walk in and the house is messy, you're not going to want to stay home. Or if it's a mess, it means that I'm a mess. Excuse me. And what we can remind ourselves in that moment is that's not what he said. Or, those are my stories and those are my fears. Let me concentrate on what's true. And I can show him that I hear him and I understand him and I can apologize for my part. If I need to apologize, I may not even need to apologize. I may just be like, yeah, it's a mess. So that's the first possibility. If it's true, the best thing to do is to own it, to take ownership of it. Because number one, it shows him that you hear him and you respect him and you care about what he has to say. And number two, it actually gives you the possibility to deal with it. It may be that you're going to choose right now not to deal with it, but what if it wasn't like the house is a mess? What if he tells you, when you called me earlier today, I was trying to tell you that I needed to go and you weren't listening. And it really frustrates me when you do that. Right. And you could actually listen and say, you know what? I hear that and I apologize and I'll be more mindful of that. Right? You're only going to have the ability to work on that you're only going to be able to bring awareness to it if you can hear what he's telling you. Now you have the opportunity to have better connection. You have an opportunity to show up better, to respect him and to respect yourself, right? To not have to push yourself out there, whatever it is, right? Just giving an example. But when we can admit that something is true, then we can take responsibility for it. Okay. Now, again, I'm giving different examples. If it's not something that you have to apologize for, then don't apologize. If it's not something that's your responsibility, then you don't have to take responsibility. You can just say, yeah, you can agree that it's true, that it's a mess, right? Every example is going to work differently for different people. What I'm saying here is that number one, we want to look at is what he's saying is it true? Whatever it is. And if it's true, and you're feeling conflicted by it, you're feeling like, I don't know if I can agree with that. I don't know if I can apologize for that. Look in yourself and ask yourself, what is the story or what is the fear that's coming up for me that makes me not want to agree or not want to show understanding of of what he's saying? Because as we were saying, it's what's going on in our minds that allows us to feel offended and get triggered and end up in a fight, right? So if you check in, you're like, let me look at it. Like, is it true what he's saying? Yeah, it's true. Okay, so am I willing to admit that it's true? Am I willing to apologize? If not, then why not? Right? What's coming up for me? Okay. The second option is that what he's saying is wrong. It's just not true. Number one, it wasn't my responsibility to clean up. Number two, it is clean. Who knows, right? Just going with that example. Or he's just saying something ridiculous like, why didn't you pick up my dry cleaning? Or why did you, why are you letting the baby cry? Or why did you not call me during the day and ask me how I am? And you're just like, I did call you. I called you twice. I went straight to voicemail. Whatever he's saying is just not true. And in that case, you can understand, right? Again, tune into yourself and realize, oh, he's saying I have green hair. This is not about me. Okay. This is not about me. Wait, can people hear me? I'm hearing that people can't hear. Let me see. Can people hear? Someone want to come up on camera or somehow? Okay, great. So when your husband says something that doesn't seem to make sense to you and it's not true, you can, and you've checked in with yourself to see if it's true and you're like, no, it's not true, then realize it's not about you. Something's going on for him. And this is an opportunity for you to do two things. Number one, you can set up a boundary and say, I am not going to be triggered. I'm not going to allow in words that aren't true. I'm not gonna he can't, if he's trying to say something negative about me and it's not true, I don't need to let that in. I don't need to be affected by that. I can realize that this is about him. And then number two is I can look to use empathy. I can look to understand, wow, what's going on for you? What is it that you're feeling? What is it that makes you say that? Right. And so the best way to do that is to actually start to ask more specific questions, right? To really try to get an understanding of what is going on for him. So you can ask questions like, what specifically is not clean? Or, or when would you have liked me to call? Or, what makes you believe that the baby was crying all day? Now, again, it's very important to ask it in a non-defensive and in a non-judgmental way. Instead, the idea is to be open. You're really trying to understand him. What's going on for you? Because something in that moment is going on for him. Now, it could be as he answers the questions, that he himself will realize that, it's his own thing. You may realize, oh, that's true. I didn't do that, or I did leave that, or I didn't call you then. You may understand better what's going on in his head, right? You can only benefit from this. And again, if what comes back is something very negative and very hurtful, you can have your filter up. You can have your boundary that doesn't allow those words to come in and hurt you. So those are those two options. And if it's a little bit of yes and a little bit of no, what's actually really powerful is to always try to find, as much as possible, a little bit of truth in what he's saying. Because as much as you can find that little bit of truth and agree with it or apologize for it, what you're doing is showing him, I hear you. I care about you. You matter to me. I'm listening to you. Even if he's saying 99% like his own stories, and let's just even be conscious not to call that craziness. Like we all have our stories. We also, when we get upset, a lot of that is our stories. So he has his stuff that's coming up for him to find that 1% that we can agree with, that we can maybe even apologize for. Even if we're agreeing or apologizing in principle, like I can understand that if you felt like I didn't reach out to you all day, that must have been really upsetting for you, or that would be really upsetting, right? Yeah, I can totally get that when you come home, you expect to see X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I can really understand that when I said that thing in front of your mother and you interpreted it the way you did, that that would be really hurtful. I can understand that. Even if there's a misunderstanding, even if he's judging you, even if he's making things up, you can even agree in principle. And as soon as you do that, you show him, I hear you, I'm with you. And that allows his own defenses to go down. It allows him to feel heard. I can understand that you feel that way, right? I can understand. It's a little different than saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, because that's often felt as dismissive. But it could be, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm sorry that that made you feel that way, or I hear that you felt that way. Okay. Now the third option, the third possibility in this situation is very often the most important one. And that is when you hear something, I can't believe you said that, to check in with yourself. Did he actually say that? Because so often what we are getting upset about, what we're feeling hurt about, what's getting triggered within us is because of what we heard him say, but it wasn't necessarily what he actually said. And that's the importance of being able to differentiate between what happens and what I'm making it mean. So, what happened might be that he said, let's just use the same examples. Oh my gosh, so and so's house is so clean. And you make it mean, right? What do you hear? You're a terrible wife. She's better than you. I wish I had married her. I can't believe I'm stuck with you. You're so horrible. You're such a failure. What is wrong with you? But he didn't say that. And his line may have meant many different things, right? Very often, this may be why, if you've ever had the experience of saying to your husband, I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you did that. And he's like, what are you talking about? What did I say? What did I do wrong? It's because he like doesn't even can't even fathom that that's what he did, because he was expressing an observation. He may have even been saying it that, like, I'm so glad I don't live in that museum, right? He may have been commenting on how much they must be spending on cleaning help. He may have just exactly just made an observation, right? Men often, their brains kind of work, they work differently than ours do, and they may just see and comment on a reality. You may have had the same thing happen with your husband the other way, where you may have said something and he interpreted it to be something totally different, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's not what I said. So it's very important to be able to differentiate between what what was said and what you made it mean. And as much as possible, stick to reacting to, stick to uh, um, responding to only what was actually said. Because what wasn't said may not have been intended at all. Generally, what we're doing is number one, we're mind reading. We're assuming that we know exactly what our husbands are thinking. We know exactly what they meant. And we always know when they walk in what kind of mood they're in. Oh, I know he's in a bad mood. I know he's not happy with me. I know he feels hurt. I know he meant that. I know. And the truth is, try it, test it out. Ask your husband when you think he's in a bad mood. Are you in a bad mood right now? Not like so often, his response will be, no. Why do you think that? Right? Like we think we can read each other, but actually, one of the best things you can do for your relationship, not just so that you don't get into unnecessary arguments, but also to protect the excitement in your marriage and the romance, is to always stay curious, assuming that you don't know what your husband's thinking. You don't know what he meant. And instead asking, wait, did you mean this when you said that? Or what specifically did you mean by that? What's your mood right now? Like asking those kinds of questions can deal with so many, like get rid of so many of the types of interactions that cause us the most frustration. And even within ourselves, why why am I getting so upset right now? What did he actually say? Did he say what I thought he said? And did he mean by what he said exactly what I thought he said? Right? So we're mind reading, and then we're taking the mind reading and we're filtering it through our own stories and our own fears and our own limiting beliefs. And then we're having these, conversations that are more like arguments and fights and attacks that don't end in a positive way. Right? What we're not talking about here is communication. This is not communicating. Communication is clearly expressing ourselves with the ability to hear what the other person is saying and actually working together towards solutions. This is not communication. This is, triggered attacks to each other where each person is so stuck in their stories and stuck in their interpretations that what each of you are, it's almost like we're each having our own conversation, right? I'm talking about the way I'm interpreting it, and he's talking about the way he's interpreting what I interpreted. So, just to go back over what we were saying here, whenever your husband walks in or starts a conversation and says something, or in the middle of a conversation says something hurtful, first of all, remembering that he that whether or not how you're going to react to that, how you're going to process it, how you're going to um, how you're going to interact with him after that is a choice. You get to make a choice whether or not you are going to let those words in and how you are going to interpret those words. And then you get to decide if there's something true or even a piece of truth in that. You can take responsibility, you can agree, you can show understanding for what he's saying. If it's not true, you don't have to let it in. You don't have to let his words in through into your boundary. And at the same time, you can look to understand, why did he say that? What's going on for him? And when something does come in, you can ask yourself, what am I making this mean? Did he actually say that? Right? Could it be that he meant something else? Could it be he had a different intention? Could it be that this is my own fears and my own thoughts that I'm making it mean that? And the goal is to not get into these heated, fights and arguments that at the end of it, you're just like, wait, what even just happened? That's not who I want to be. And I'm not even sure that we understand each other at all, right? We're not being the people we want to be. It's not communication, and it's only causing negativity. Now, there may be things that you want to say or things that you're feeling, and there is a time and place to communicate that. But it's always important in real communication, in real conversations, to work through those rising frustrations, those rising hurt feelings, to work through those feelings and work through those fears so that you can actually hear each other and have that communication. Okay. So let me just quickly go through the questions here to see if anything is coming up that I'd like to address. Um, Okay, so someone's asking, what if like he's coming in and he's having unrealistic expectations? And that's exactly where you have the ability to say, you're right. It is a mess. I've been really busy cleaning for Pesach. I'm really busy dealing with X, Y, and Z, and you could stop at that. And that's it, not in a defensive way, just in like an agreement. It's so frustrating that while I'm cleaning, the house feels more of a mess, right? Isn't that so frustrating about Pesach cleaning, right? Or, yeah, it's so hard to take care of everything at the same time. Not in a defensive way, in a vulnerable, I'm agreeing with you way. Okay. Um, Here, in order to do this, you need to be in a very balanced state, in a good mood. Usually, you're caught up when you're super busy, tired after a busy day, etc. Yes, so it is a personal avoda, like you're saying. It is important. We do have to be in a pretty good mood to be able to do this, and that's why there's a few things that are really important here. Number one, this is why our self care is so important, because when we're taking care of ourselves, when we are not in depletion, we're going to have an easier time staying in integrity of who we want to be. It's also why it's never a good idea to have conversations when the house is flying, right? When everyone's talking to you at once, and one of those people is your husband trying to have a conversation with you, it's almost always going to end in a negative way. And what you can do in that moment is say, honey, I really want to talk to you and I really want to have this conversation with you. But right now, I cannot give you my full attention. So either let's go to the other room and do this where nobody else is interrupting us. Or you could say, let's talk at X time and give him a time. Tell him a better time to talk to him. If he says, no, 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 I really need to talk to you now, I hear you. I know this is important to you. And right now, everyone is, looking for dinner and needs to talk to me. So I can't give you my full attention right now. Let's have this conversation after the kids are in bed, or let's have this conversation after everyone's eaten, or let's go into the other room if that's possible. Right. And I'm saying give like one option, or maybe two. But it's very important to stick to that boundary of I can't talk to you right now, because not setting that boundary and trying to have that conversation or any conversation while all the kids are pulling you at the same time is likely going to end with somebody upset or crying, right? Your husband, or one of the kids is going to end up upset because either you'll yell at the kids, you'll yell at your husband. A kid will want your attention and not get it. Your husband, no matter what, will still feel frustrated. You'll feel like that overwhelm feeling where like, I can't give my attention to everyone. So do yourself and your husband a favor and say, I can't right now. And then when you're feeling, this is why it's a process, but as you start to feel like, to start to notice when the tension is coming up, when you're feeling yourself, that something within you is getting triggered, something in you is making you want to attack or defend or turn away, and start to get curious about what is that? What is coming up for me right now? And even if you can't do it in the moment, if later you can reflect and say, what was that about? Why did I react that way? Right? What was getting triggered for me? What do I think he was really trying to say? And then you can either use that information for the future. You can choose to apologize if you feel that it's the right thing to do. And it will always help you for future reference, because you're dealing with making new patterns, like literally in your brain, and your brain doesn't know the difference between what you think about and what actually happens, which is really cool. So again, to reiterate that question of how do I stop myself from getting triggered? How do I stop myself from responding not the way I want to in that moment? Is really about being conscious about what is actually being said. What is he actually saying? And how am I going to choose to respond to it? Remembering that he can't hurt you if you don't, like you don't have to let his words in. If he's saying something crazy, it's like he's saying you have green hair. You don't need to defend that. You would just want to understand, why are you saying that? Why would, like, what is that coming from? And if my hair's gotten a little green, I could say, yeah, you're right, it's gotten a little green for whatever reason. And if he's not saying that, what is he actually saying? And it's all about leaning in to empathy of yourself, right? Not letting in things that are just not true, not letting yourself be someone you don't want to be, and leaning into empathy for him. Let me try to really understand what's bothering him and show him that, you know what, I'm listening. Because let's be honest, ladies, and this I'll wrap up. Let's be honest, when we are triggered, I know when I am saying something crazy because I'm upset, or I'm bothered, and my husband could easily say, stop being crazy. What's wrong with you? When he can listen and hear me and make space for me and try to actually understand what I'm saying in that moment, that's when I really feel loved, right? When we can feel heard in those moments, that's how we get to feel respected and understood and loved, even when we are not being, you know, full on truth sayers. And sometimes our husbands will be in that place too. They're tired, they're cranky, someone upset them, they're misunderstanding something that we're saying. And in that moment, we get to choose if we're going to support them. We don't have to let in anything negative. We don't have to let ourselves be hurt. We don't have to agree or apologize for something that we don't need to apologize for. We don't need to believe that we have green hair, because we know that we don't. And we get to show up and show our support while also setting that boundary and protecting ourselves. So, thank you all for being here with me. Thank you for being here with actually, I'm drinking hot water and honey today, but for our coffee and connection, I look forward to seeing you all next week. And until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.